What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another YouTube exclusive video. I am your host, James Murphy, aka Murph, and in this video I'm going to be explaining why Major League Baseball needs expansion teams. I'm not going to say how many. They can start with just one and then go up to two, where they eventually will be at 32 like the National Hockey League did, or they can just jump up to two to keep things even and seamless from one season to the next. But in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly why MLB needs at least one, but two would be ideal in terms of expanding the league. Let's get into it. So since 1961, that is when the expansion era in baseball started, and since 1961, there have been 14 teams added to the MLB, and those teams are as followed: the Los Angeles Angels, the Washington Senators, the Houston Colt 45s, the New York Mets, the Kansas City Royals, Montreal Expos, San Diego Padres, Seattle Pilots, the Seattle Mariners, Toronto Blue Jays, Colorado Rockies, Florida Marlins, Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Tampa Bay Rays. To give you more details about these teams, because some of these teams are probably teams you've never heard of before, I will go into each team's introductory year, and if they are a team that no longer exists, I will tell you exactly where they are in current baseball, which is 2021. So in 1961, we saw the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and the Washington Senators, who are now the Texas Rangers. In 1962, we saw the New York Mets and the Houston Colt 45s, who are now the Houston Astros. 1969, we saw the Kansas City Royals, the San Diego Padres, the Montreal Expos, who are now the Washington Nationals, and the Seattle Pilots, who are the Milwaukee Brewers. 1977, we saw the Seattle Mariners and the Toronto Blue Jays. 1993, Colorado Rockies and the Florida Marlins, who are now the Miami Marlins. And then lastly, in 1998, we saw the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Tampa Bay Rays, who are now the Tampa Bay Rays, all get introduced into Major League Baseball. For those keeping track at home, out of the 14 expansion teams, 3 of them have relocated, which are the Seattle Pilots to Milwaukee, the Montreal Expos to Washington, and the Washington Senators to Texas. Of those same 14 teams, 4 of them have rebranded. The Houston Colt 45s are now the Houston Astros, the Florida Marlins are now the Miami Marlins, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays are now just the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim have bounced around between that name, the California Angels, Los Angeles Angels, and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Kind of gone back and forth throughout their history, but nonetheless, a rebrand is a rebrand. In now 50 years since the first year of MLB's expansion era, we have seen roughly 20 different teams play in Major League Baseball. That's including the 14 teams that were added to the league, the 3 of them that have relocated, and then the 4 teams that have rebranded. But if we want to count the handful of times that the Angels have rebranded, then let's just call it 23. But for simple sake, we'll just call it 20. With all of the details, the history, the information, and the backstory now all covered, I will tell you why baseball needs expansion, or at least in my opinion, why baseball needs expansion. Because in 2021 and for the past several years, we have seen a decline in Major League Baseball's popularity. You could say that in 2021, baseball has kind of spiked up a little bit, but in the whole grand scheme of things, baseball is being referred to as a dying sport, and I relatively agree with that claim, because in terms of popularity, would you rather sit down and watch baseball or football? A lot of people are going to pick football. Would you rather sit down and watch baseball or hockey? A lot of people might pick hockey. And then when it comes to basketball and baseball, though basketball has their own problems, but we won't get into that today, a lot of people may pick that because it is a faster paced game. It has a time limit of 48 regulation minutes, where baseball does not. Baseball is the only sport that does not have a time limit. You look at football, they have 4 15-minute quarters. Hockey has 3 20-minute periods, and basketball has 4 12-minute quarters themselves. Baseball has 9 innings. That could last for 2.5 hours. That could last for 3.5 hours. And with baseball being a very, very dense schedule where there's 162 regulation games, it's very hard to sit down and watch every single game night in and night out, knowing that it could be 3+ hours of game. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have 3 hours to just sit day in and day out to watch a baseball game when I can just watch the next one tomorrow, or I can catch the one the next day. But with football, where there's 16, well, I guess now there's going to be 17 regular season games. There's one every Sunday. Your team plays every Sunday. So, course of the week goes by, you can sit down and watch that one game a week. With basketball and hockey, they have 82 games that are kind of spaced out over 5 or 6 months, but it's not every single night. You'll have the Bruins, if you're a Boston fan, play on Tuesday. The Celtics will play on Wednesday. No team will play on Thursday. Then the Bruins will come back and play on Friday, where the Patriots will end up be playing on Sunday. But baseball with the Red Sox, they're playing every single day. So when it comes time to pick between a team that you don't always see and may not be on for a couple more days, or in football's case, a week, you're going to watch those games over a baseball game because you have an entire spring and an entire summer to sit down and watch any of the 162 games. That's one reason why I think baseball is a dying sport, because it's too dense. It's very difficult to attract and maintain viewership day in and day out. Now, I could go into a whole nother video why I believe Major League Baseball needs to cut down on their regular season, maybe to 148 or back down to 154. We could also even argue that maybe go from 9 innings to 8 innings would also be a good idea. I've heard people say put a clock on it, 3.5 hours, just like in Little League or in high school. Can't go over a certain time limit, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it may be. Now, that's a little tricky because, bottom of the 8th inning, 3.5 hours clicks. You got to finish the inning out. I guess, you ran out of time, and baseball has done attempted to do good work and kind of shorten the game by limiting the number of mound visits or catcher visits, to limit the number of pitching changes with the bullpen, where each reliever has to face 3 batters minimum, with the exception of the inning ending and an injury. But I believe that a pitch clock should be the next step in implementation for baseball to kind of shorten down its daily games. We've seen the pitch clock be used in the minor leagues where it's at 15 seconds, I believe, in between each pitches. Now, we can start at 20. I would love to get down to 15 myself for Major League Baseball, but 20 is a good starting point. It gives pitchers something to kind of keep in the back of their heads, and it also allows fans to know that, okay, the next pitch will be in 20 seconds, instead of the pitcher coming to the set, stepping off, scratching their balls, fixing the hat, hucking a loogie, and then repeating the process, maybe thrown over to first base, doing it again and again, and now we're waiting for 3 minutes in between each pitch. The last reason why I think baseball is a quote-unquote dying sport, or struggling in comparison to the other sports, is because of its blackout restriction. Now, a lot of people may know about this if they watch games on national television, or if they have MLB Network, where they can watch all 30 baseball teams at any given time. However, they can't watch the teams that are restricted in their blackout region. So for me, I live in New England. I am blacked out to any and all Red Sox games. For what? I don't know. If you live in New York, you're going to be blacked out to maybe some Red Sox games. I'm not too sure, depending on what part of New York, but the Mets and the Yankees, and you can do that all across the country. California, you're probably going to get blacked out depending on what part, but the Dodgers, the Angels, the Padres, and then if you're more up north, you're probably going to be blacked out to the Athletics and the San Francisco Giants. Now, I saw a blackout map a couple years ago. I don't know if it's still accurate or not. Probably is, where the state of Iowa is blacked out to 4 teams, 4 baseball teams around them. I think it's like the Cubs, the White Sox, the Cardinals, and maybe the Twins or something. I don't even know who it is. But it's like, how can the game grow when a poor state and their, citizens and the fans of the game in those states can't tune in to watch literally a third of the league? Because those 4 teams are playing 4 separate teams. So that's 8 teams that you can't watch. That's not good. that doesn't help grow the game, and that doesn't promote healthy baseball viewership. So those are reasons why I believe baseball is a quote-unquote dying sport, or at least leaning in that direction for all those reasons. I will admit 2021 has been very exciting for the league so far this season, although we're not out of April just yet, but I do believe that it is off to a very good start. Now that we've broken down the teams that have come from expansion and why I believe baseball needs expansion, let's go into some numbers. So I have calculated the combined record as of the end of 2020 for all of the expansion teams. So that's all 14 teams. In total, they have played 99,138 games. And in those games, they have won 48,425. And they have lost 50,713. That is as of the end of 2020. And that is a winning percentage of 0.488%. That winning percentage is better than the following non-expansion teams: the Philadelphia Phillies, the Minnesota Twins, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Oakland Athletics, whose winning percentage is 0.479. So all 14 expansion teams combined have a better winning percentage as of the end of 2020 than the Philadelphia Phillies, Minnesota Twins, Baltimore Orioles, and the Oakland Athletics. Like I said, whose combined winning percentage is 0.479. So it is a proven fact that expansion teams can be successful. And to back up that statement, I've calculated the amount of World Series that those 4 teams have won, which is a total of 17 total. The Phillies, the Twins, the Orioles, and the Athletics, in their history, have won 17 combined titles. And for the expansion teams from 1961 on, they have won a total of 12 titles. So not as many, but still, there is some success there. So where could we potentially see these expansion teams? Well, I've come up with a list of 8 locations that I think would be strong fits for potential MLB expansion teams. And those cities are as followed: Montreal, Nashville, Tennessee, Vancouver, Las Vegas, Norfolk, Portland, Oklahoma City, and Mexico City. I think Montreal, because they had the Expos at one time. The only reason why they left is because of ownership. When he bought the team, they said he wasn't going to leave Montreal. A couple years later, the paperwork is passed on and they're going to move to Washington. Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville is a growing hub here in America. Nashville is a popular spot for a lot of different reasons. Country, the food down there, the sports teams that they currently have. I think Nashville would be a really good addition to that city and that region of the country. Vancouver, Canada. We've seen Vancouver Canucks. We've seen the Vancouver Grizzlies. Been there before, although they're now in Memphis. However, I think Vancouver would give a great addition to not only Canada, but just that area of the continent. It would give the Mariners a good little rival right there, and it would also introduce another Canada team to help bolster baseball's presence in Canada, along with Toronto, as Vancouver's on the opposite side of Canada, whereas Toronto is relatively on the eastern coast. Las Vegas. Las Vegas is growing right before our eyes. The Las Vegas Golden Knights were just introduced to the NHL in 2017, I believe. The Las Vegas Raiders just had their first inaugural season in Las Vegas this past year. Vegas is growing as not just a gambling and a casino city where you go spend money, have a good time. It is actually trying to grow as a spot, as a hub that's bigger and better than just that. I think adding Las Vegas to your map of teams would be a great addition for baseball, as it would drive up the Vegas market and people would be much more interested in that team because of the flock of teams that are already there, plus the current state of Vegas, which is in a very good spot. Norfolk, Virginia. I like this one because the Expos were actually rumored to go to Norfolk, Virginia before it eventually moved over to Washington. I think Norfolk, Virginia may be a little too close to Washington, but it gives it a little interesting twist to it, because in the DMV area, there's only the Nationals or any Washington sports team really, until you go to like Philly, or if you go down to Carolina where you find some sports teams. I think Norfolk, Virginia will kind of give the DMV area, or at least Virginia itself, a good sports team that they can root for instead of having to outreach and pick one of their own. Portland, Oregon is a good one because I personally like this one, as it would give the Seattle Mariners a good little rival right there on the West Coast. You have the Portland Trailblazers. There's a soccer team in Portland, a WNBA team in Portland, I believe. So Portland is trying to also grow as a destination, as a city as well, on the western coastline of the country. Obviously, with California right below it and Seattle right above it, it has a lot of good flexibility, and it would allow those fans in Portland, maybe even Idaho and the surrounding states as well, to actually root for a team instead of having to pick and outreach for one, just like Norfolk, Virginia, and that area has to do with their fans. Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is, or maybe was, on the rise when they got the Thunder a little over 10 years ago. But nowadays, it's just really, I mean, it's a good spot, but all they have is the Thunder, so it could work, and there's really nothing in that area besides maybe Missouri, where the Cardinals and the Royals are, or if you look to Texas, where the Rangers and the Astros are. It would kind of give a good little balance right there, but I think this is low on the list. And then even lower on the list, but could still be an interesting location, is Mexico City. And I say this because it would help baseball expand into another country where baseball has never been before, in Mexico. I think it would be a really good addition to Major League Baseball because it would help expand its viewership, its fan base to another country. Everyone from Mexico who likes baseball would surround and root and support for that team. Could it be a little problematic, with borders and such? Possibly. But, we've seen it work before, especially with, international teams, especially around soccer, where they kind of bounce from country to country all the time. I think it could absolutely work. I know Puerto Rico has been kind of rumored to have a sports team, whether it's the Tampa Bay Rays relocating or just a brand new team going there in general. I would like to see Puerto Rico as well get another team, as people down in that area will just kind of surround and root for that team. And I think that's what baseball needs to kind of focus on, is what areas can support a baseball team. And I think not just financially, but in terms of support, you need to look at the fan base that would be around in those certain areas. So I think all of those potential possible cities could be good fits for Major League Baseball, whether it's one team or two teams expanding, or maybe even a relocation of a team. And I know I kind of alluded to it with the Tampa Bay Rays, and I've also come up with a list of teams that we could see relocate, which I think is a whole nother animal. But relocation could also kind of help drive baseball, because depending on the relocation of this team, it could also bring in those fans. So if a team was to relocate to Portland or, Vancouver, Canada, those areas are going to surround and get hype and excited for those brand new teams, because they finally have their own teams to root and love for. So anyways, these possible teams that I just want to brush upon really quickly: Tampa Bay Rays. They have no fans in attendance, or poor fan attendance. Their stadium is garbage, and there's no plan to rebuild or build a new stadium. Plus, the Tampa Bay Rays have been rumored to play their games in Montreal, to play in Puerto Rico at some times. So I think the Tampa Bay Rays would be a good team to relocate, although they are not a poor team in terms of winning percentage. Miami Marlins, another Florida team. Team just straight sucks. I don't think this team would actually relocate because they just rebranded, and Miami is a hub of America. You have the Miami Heat, you got the Florida Panthers. It's just a really good location. Miami in general is a great destination for vacationing, for partying, and all that good stuff. I don't think the Marlins will move from Miami because they also just have a brand new stadium that they just got built a few years back, and for all those reasons that I mentioned about the city of Miami. Cleveland Indians, a mainstay in baseball for years and years and years and years. However, controversial name change has been implemented, where they said that they won't change the name, then they said they will change the name, and there's been no plans to change the name as of yet. So there's just someone to keep an eye on. They also haven't won a World Series in, I think, since like 1947 I don't even know, 7 maybe, 44, I don't know, around the 40s. So it's been a long time for them. I think they're the longest droughted team in baseball in terms of championships, which isn't a reason to move. It's just something to keep noteworthy of. So instead of changing the name from Cleveland Indians to Cleveland whatever, they may just look to relocate and rebrand as a whole. But losing a team in Cleveland could be a big hit to that market and baseball because people and fans do love the Cleveland Indians. The Los Angeles Angels, a very intriguing one as they are the second team in the Los Angeles market, which does somewhat hinder them. However, being in Los Angeles where there's so many people there also significantly helps them because if you're not picking the Dodgers, you could pick the Angels. However, you also have the Padres just 2 hours south of you who are up and coming on the rise this year, who are looking really, really good. So you potentially could be taking the third fiddle in that Southern California area. And I just don't think it's a good idea for them because they're going to be picked last between the Dodgers, Padres, and themselves. I don't see the Angels moving at any time, but it's just also something to reconsider since we're on the topic of expansion teams and relocating teams. And then lastly, the Oakland Athletics. They have an awful stadium. They've been really good past couple years, and they've also been really bad recently as well. The stadium is not in good shape. It's old. It sucks. It was a hybrid between baseball and football. I know a lot of players been wanting a new stadium. Fans want a new stadium. Like I said, it's a football stadium originally, so it's massive, and there's so many seats that are just blocked off because you're not going to draw that much of an attendance to a baseball game. So it just looks, really, raggedy that, have these tarps where the retired numbers are. So it is kind of nice, but just covering all those seats. And I believe like in the 70s or whatever, there used to be like an opening where you could see like the view of the Oakland area, and they blocked it off to put more seats. And I think like, the press boxes or whatever out there. And it just doesn't really sit well. It just encapsulates the stadium, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to relocate. However, it is something to consider because with the Giants just across the bay, which does bring on a great rivalry, so I don't think that they should move. However, if they can't get a brand new stadium in the city of Oakland, which they've been trying to for a long, long time, this might be something that they need to consider. This is just something noteworthy that I want to consider for potential future teams and locations that are up for grabs. So if we don't see an expansion team, we could potentially see a relocation of a team and vice versa as well. The last thing I want to talk about before I get into the pros and cons of baseball expanding is talking about the revenue by each league, each of the 4 major sport leagues: baseball, basketball, football, and hockey. These numbers are accurate as of 2020 for all 4 sports with the exception of football being 2019. So just that as a caveat, let's keep that in consideration. But anyways, coming in with $4.37 billion, the NHL comes in last place in terms of revenue. Following them is the National Basketball Association with $7.92 billion. Then we have baseball at $10.37 billion in second place, and then taking the cake in first place, no surprise, the NFL with $15.26 billion in terms of league revenue. So baseball being second in terms of the big 4 is very encouraging and very promising because it is a reason that the league is not dying and that baseball is doing A-okay, that they don't need expansion, that they don't need relocation, that they're doing good, that they're in a good spot. Now you have to keep in mind that the NHL and the NBA play less games, smaller schedule, so they may not bring in as many fans. In addition, their stadiums and arenas are also smaller, where I believe the most you'd see at a basketball or hockey arena is like 22,000 maybe, and a lot of the teams across the country share the same stadium. So if like the Bruins and the Celtics, they share the same stadium. The Rangers and the Knicks in New York, they share the same stadium. So you see a lot of that throughout both basketball and hockey. If they have both teams in that city, they'll share a stadium, which will also kind of affect the revenue because if one stadium only holds 20,000, then the same is going to be for the other team, right? And in the same stadium. So Baseball coming in second is really no surprise because their stadiums are bigger where you could see 30, 40, 50,000 fans in attendance. You could also, draw that many amount of fans in during the course of the season. I mean, obviously with COVID being a thing, it's a little hard to get 30, 40, 50,000 fans in. But if your stadium can hold 50,000 people, you're only allowed 20%. Well, that's still 10,000 fans, which is half of what you would see at a full house for a basketball or a hockey game. Football, completely different breed of animal. Like I said, 16 now going on to 17 games. One game a week on Sunday. Everyone tunes in. People love the action, the deep balls, the big hits, and the tight games and all that good stuff. No one is going to dethrone football anytime soon. So with everything that I've discussed, I've come up with both pros and cons for Major League Baseball needing expansion. And I apologize, this video is a long one. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I feel so strongly passionate about the sport. However, I think this is an important topic to discuss and go over. So anyways, I will go over the pros first and then the cons, and then I will give my final opinion and take on it. So for the pros, number 1, 5 teams could possibly need a new change of scenery. Number 2, games are too long, so new teams would have people watching them regardless, whether it's expansion or relocation. Wherever that city is, those people in those cities will be watching the games, regardless if it's 3 hours, 3.5 hours, game 1 or game 162, because it is a fresh, brand new team in an inaugural season. 3, historically, expansion teams don't suck. We would honestly think that expansion teams would suck, but with expansion drafts, free agency, international market, a lot of good players can be added very quickly to be competitive right away. Number 4, baseball is considered a dying sport, like I mentioned before, with long games. It's either a home run or a strikeout, which I didn't talk about too much, but players have this massive uppercut where they just try to hit the ball out, and if they don't, they strike out. They don't care about singles, doubles, anything like that, on base percentage. They just want to hit the ball 600 feet, and that's it. There's a long time in between pitches, like I mentioned. Pitcher will get the ball, step off, scratch his nuts, fix his cap, look back in, step off, throw over to first. You get the picture. Number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, number 5. Baseball is heavy in terms of East Coast teams. Having teams expand or relocate to the West Coast would bring in new fans, new eyes, and more money. There are a plethora of teams on the Eastern Coast. The Red Sox, Yankees, Blue Jays, Braves, the Mets, the Phillies, the Pirates, the Nationals. You get the picture. And then you look out west, there's a big void, around the Utah, and then the Oregon, the Idaho, the Vancouver region over there. Put another team out there. Yes, you have the Mariners out there, but give the Mariners that, hardcore rival that they need and that they absolutely would welcome. Now for the cons. 1, league's revenue is steadily increasing every year since 2001. That is true, as we've seen in 2020. We saw $10.37 billion in terms of league revenue for Major League Baseball. Number 2, MLB has the second highest league revenue of the 4 major sports that I just mentioned. 3, World Series had better ratings than the NBA Finals this past year, so baseball is in a better spot than basketball is. You could argue for many of reasons that I'm not going to get into right now for sensitive reasons, so this video could have been easily about NBA and them needing expansion or relocation. Number 4, COVID-19 had happened, is happening, and will be happening for however much longer. So extra money isn't lying around for a group of people, investors, whatever, to pull together to push to buy a new team or to take a team and relocate it. At the end of the day, looking at all the facts, looking at all the numbers and all the information that I presented to you, I'm a firm believer that baseball needs expansion. I think starting with one team would be great. You saw that with hockey, with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. It kind of skews the divisions and such, but that's okay. As long as you have a plan to implement a 32nd team, I think that's the proper way to go. You could bring in both of them right away. However, I don't know if you're going to be able to get two groups to want to go in at the same time for two different teams. Starting with one, maybe see how successful they are. Another group wants to come in as well. The Las Vegas Golden Knights, they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals in their very first year. Very successful. They broke all the records for expansion teams in all of sports. We could see something like that again, where that market, Las Vegas, their fan base, their viewership was watching all season long. They were buying stuff and buying tickets all year long. We could see the same thing. We could see the same exact thing with another team here in baseball. It's been over 20 years since we've had an expansion team. Not that we're due for one. However, the claim that baseball is a dying sport, for the reasons that I've presented, I think having an expansion team would help kind of simmer that out and draw attention away from that, as the league could focus on implementing the new team, and they could also implement new rules to kind of help baseball totally out, revamp the sport, and push it forward and give football a run for its money. Whew, that was a lot of stuff. So guys, thank you so much for joining me for this edition of YouTube exclusive. I'm your host, James Murphy, aka Murph, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Reach out to me on social media at Murphs_BostonST, where the ST stands for Sports Talk. Please don't forget to leave a like, smash it if you enjoyed it, and if you're new to the channel or haven't considered yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm really looking forward to you joining the team and joining the wagon. Everybody, please enjoy the rest of your day, morning, night, whenever you listen to this video, and I will catch you in the next one. I appreciate you listening all the way through, but until the next one, I love you. See ya.